This is the story of Florence Nightingale, the woman they called the Lady with the Lamp, and her journey will leave you breathless. May 12, 1820, Florence, Italy. A baby girl was born into one of the wealthiest families in England. They named her after the city of her birth, Florence. Her family had everything: massive estates, servants, connections to royalty. Young Florence grew up in luxury that most people could never imagine. She was educated by private tutors. She learned multiple languages: English, French, German, Italian. She studied mathematics, philosophy, history. She had the finest dresses. She attended the most elegant parties. But here's the thing about Florence: she hated it all. While other wealthy girls dreamed of marriage and social status, Florence felt trapped. She felt like she was living in a beautiful prison. Every ball, every party, every social gathering felt meaningless to her. She would look around at the wealthy elite and think, is this all there is? Is this what life is supposed to be? Wearing fancy dresses and making small talk while people are suffering in the world? Her mother and sister couldn't understand her. They said, Florence, you have everything. Why aren't you happy? Why can't you just be grateful and marry a wealthy man? But Florence wasn't interested in being grateful. She was interested in purpose, and she hadn't found it yet. At night, while everyone slept, young Florence would lie awake and pray. God, she would whisper, there must be more to life than this. Show me my purpose. Show me what I'm meant to do. And then, one day, everything changed. February 7th, 1837, Florence was 16 years old. On this day, she experienced something that would change her life forever. She heard a voice, a calling. She believed it was God speaking directly to her. The voice said, you have a mission. You are meant to serve others. You are meant to help the suffering. Florence was stunned. She felt electricity run through her body. For the first time in her life, everything made sense. This was why she felt so different. This was why luxury felt meaningless. She had a higher calling, but there was a problem. A massive problem. Florence felt called to help the sick and the poor. She felt called to become a nurse. Now you need to understand something. In Victorian England, nursing was considered the worst profession a woman could have. Nurses were seen as low-class, immoral, often drunk women. They were prostitutes and criminals. No respectable woman became a nurse. For a wealthy, educated woman like Florence to want to become a nurse, it was unthinkable. It was a scandal. It was social suicide, but Florence didn't care. She had found her purpose, and nothing was going to stop her. She went to her parents and said, I want to become a nurse. The reaction was explosive. Her mother was furious, her father was horrified, her sister thought she had gone insane. Absolutely not. They screamed, you will destroy our family's reputation. You will disgrace us. You will ruin your life. But Florence stood firm, and this is where the real battle began. For 9 years, Florence fought her family. 9 years of arguments, 9 years of tears, 9 years of being told she was crazy. Her family tried everything to change her mind. They took her on trips across Europe hoping she would forget this ridiculous idea. They introduced her to wealthy suitors hoping she would marry and settle down. A man named Richard Monckton Milnes proposed to her. He was wealthy, educated, respected. He loved Florence deeply. He would have given her everything, but Florence said no. Can you imagine? She rejected marriage, rejected comfort, rejected security, all for a dream that everyone said was impossible. Her family was desperate. They locked her in her room. They monitored her every move. They treated her like a prisoner, but Florence was stubborn. She studied in secret. She read every medical book she could find. She learned about hospitals, diseases, and treatments. She prepared herself. Finally, in 1851, when Florence was 31 years old, her father gave in. He couldn't break her spirit. He couldn't change her mind. He said, go, become a nurse if you must. But you will do this alone. Florence didn't care. She had waited 9 years for this moment, and she was ready. She traveled to Germany to train at a hospital. She worked with the sick. She cleaned wounds. She held dying patients. She did work that wealthy women were never supposed to do. And for the first time in her life, Florence felt alive. By 1854, Florence had become the superintendent of a hospital for sick gentlewomen in London. She was gaining respect. She was proving everyone wrong. But then came news that shook the nation. Britain was at war. The Crimean War. British soldiers were fighting in Russia, and they were dying, not from battle wounds, but from disease. Reports came back to England describing horror. Soldiers lying in their own filth, no clean water, no proper medical care, men screaming in agony with no one to help them. The newspapers published the stories. The British people were outraged. Our soldiers are dying in hell while we do nothing. The government was desperate. They needed someone to organize medical care. They needed someone brave enough to go to a war zone. Someone suggested Florence Nightingale. The government reached out to her. They said, "Will you go to Crimea? Will you take nurses and help our soldiers?" Florence didn't hesitate. She said yes. Everyone thought she was insane. A woman going to a war zone? Impossible. Dangerous, suicidal. But Florence had waited her entire life for this moment. This was her calling. This was what God had prepared her for. She gathered 38 nurses. She trained them. And in October 1854, they set sail for Crimea. None of them knew what horror awaited them. When Florence arrived at Scutari Hospital in Turkey, she walked into hell. The smell hit her first. The stench of death, blood, human waste, and rotting flesh. It was so overwhelming that several nurses vomited immediately. The hospital was not a hospital. It was a death chamber. Thousands of wounded soldiers lay on the floor. No beds, no blankets. Men lying in pools of their own blood and excrement. Rats crawling over the bodies. No clean water. No proper food. No medical supplies. Soldiers were dying not from their wounds, but from infections, cholera, dysentery, and typhus. The death rate was 42%. Nearly half of all soldiers who came to this hospital died. The doctors didn't want Florence there. They hated her. What can a woman do here? Why, they mocked. Go back to England and let the men handle this. But Florence didn't argue. She simply said, "Let me show you." She and her nurses got to work. First, they cleaned. For weeks, they scrubbed floors, walls, and equipment. They threw out rotting materials. They opened windows for fresh air. Then Florence did something revolutionary. She introduced hygiene. She made doctors wash their hands. She ensured clean bandages. She provided clean water and proper food. The doctors fought her every step. "This is nonsense," they said. "Cleaning doesn't save lives." But Florence kept records. She used statistics, something no one had done before. She proved with numbers that hygiene saved lives. Slowly, deaths began to drop. 42% became 30%, then 20%, then 10%, then just 2%. Florence had done the impossible. She had turned hell into hope. But the work was brutal. Florence worked 20 hours a day. She barely slept. She barely ate. Every night when all the doctors went to sleep, Florence would walk through the dark corridors with her lamp, checking on every single soldier. The soldiers called her the Lady with the Lamp. When they saw her light approaching, they felt hope. They felt cared for. They felt human again. But heroism comes with a price. And Florence paid it dearly. The work broke her body. She contracted Crimean fever, a severe infection that nearly killed her. For weeks, she lay in bed delirious with fever. Everyone thought she would die, but she survived. Barely. However, the illness left permanent damage. For the rest of her life, Florence suffered from chronic pain and fatigue. She would never be fully healthy again, but even from her sickbed, Florence continued working. She wrote reports. She planned reforms. She refused to stop. By 1856, the war ended. Florence returned to England not as the wealthy socialite who had left, but as a national hero. The entire nation celebrated her. Queen Victoria invited her to the palace. Soldiers wrote songs about her. She was famous. She was beloved. But Florence didn't care about fame. She cared about change. She used her fame as a weapon. She met with government officials. She demanded healthcare reform. She pushed for better hospitals, better training for nurses, and better sanitation everywhere. And slowly the world began to listen. Florence Nightingale didn't just save soldiers. She revolutionized medicine itself. She established the first professional nursing school, the Nightingale Training School at St. Thomas's Hospital in London. She trained thousands of nurses to the highest standards. Nursing transformed from a shameful profession into a respected professional career. Because of Florence, nursing became a calling that saved millions of lives. She wrote books. Notes on nursing became the standard textbook. Her work on sanitation and statistics changed hospital design worldwide. Governments across the world consulted her. Hospitals were redesigned based on her principles. Lives were saved because of her ideas. Florence proved that women could lead. Women could innovate. Women could change the world, but she paid the price. Her chronic illness kept her mostly bedridden for the last 50 years of her life. She worked from her bed, writing letters, advising governments, continuing her mission until her body simply couldn't go on. On August 13, 1910, Florence Nightingale passed away peacefully at age 90. She had lived a long life, but most of it was spent suffering from chronic illness. Yet even in her suffering, she never stopped working. She never stopped caring. She never stopped fighting for better health care. The British government offered her a state funeral in Westminster Abbey, the highest honor. But Florence had requested something different. She wanted a simple funeral, carried by just 6 soldiers. Even in death, she remained humble. Today, nurses around the world take the Nightingale Pledge, a promise to serve with compassion and integrity. May 12th, her birthday, is celebrated as International Nurses Day. Every time a nurse saves a life, every time a hospital follows proper hygiene, every time someone chooses purpose over privilege, Florence's legacy lives on. She showed us that one person with conviction can change the world. She showed us that your circumstances don't define you, your choices do. She showed us that sometimes the most revolutionary act is simply refusing to accept that things can't change. So today, ask yourself, what is your calling? What injustice makes your heart burn? What change are you willing to sacrifice for? Remember Florence's words, how very little can be done under the spirit of fear. Don't let fear stop you. Don't let society stop you. Don't let anyone tell you what you can't do. Go out and be someone's lady with the lamp. Go out and change the world.